What you are about to hear should make your blood boil because buried inside a set of government ethics filings that Donald Trump was legally compelled to make public, there is a pattern of trading activity so staggering in scale, so perfectly timed with major world events, that it raises one of the most serious questions any sitting American president has ever faced. We are not talking about a few stock purchases. We are talking about between $220 million and $750 million in securities transactions, stocks, bonds, ETFs, executed across more than 3,800 individual trades in a single quarter, January through March of 2026, 3 months, nearly 4,000 transactions. And the timing of those trades lines up with events that only one person on the planet had advanced knowledge of. Let that sink in for a moment. The President of the United States appears to have been operating like an active Wall Street trader, buying into companies, watching the market react to his own statements and policy decisions, and walking away with enormous gains, all while the American public had zero idea this was happening. This all comes from official government disclosure forms, specifically the OGE 278T, the Office of Government Ethics Periodic Transaction Report that Donald Trump was required by law to file. These are not leaked documents. These are not anonymous sources. These are Trump's own legally mandated financial disclosures, and what they reveal is nothing short of extraordinary. Where are you watching from today? If you believe the world is entering a far more dangerous phase of political and global instability, subscribe now because the next major escalation could arrive faster than most people expect. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think about what you're hearing, then let's keep going because this gets worse. The most glaring red flag in these filings is the timing. During the first quarter of 2026, Donald Trump purchased as much as $5 million or more in individual positions in Nvidia, Oracle, Microsoft, Boeing, and Costco. But here's what makes that remarkable. The market dipped sharply when the Iran conflict escalated, and the filings show that Trump was buying heavily into equities at the exact moment that dip was happening. While ordinary Americans were panicking watching their retirement accounts bleed, Donald Trump was loading up on Apple, Nvidia, Dell, Adobe, and more. The situation is escalating rapidly in terms of what these disclosures imply, because the man who controlled the information that was driving the market was simultaneously placing trades based on that same information. And then it gets more specific. Take Dell. According to the filings, Trump had been buying Dell stock repeatedly since February 10th, accumulating a position potentially worth tens of millions of dollars. He bought more on March 2nd. He bought more again on March 11th, then again on March 23rd. And then on May 8th, after all of that accumulation had already occurred, Donald Trump stood in front of cameras and told the American public, quote, "Go out and buy Dell. They're great." Dell stock jumped between 12 and 15% that same day. What he did not mention, what he never disclosed in that moment, was that he had already built a massive personal stake in Dell before making that recommendation. Few people realize how serious this has become because what is being described here is a sitting president using the megaphone of the White House to move markets in which he personally held undisclosed financial positions. This is not a one-time incident. The pattern repeats across multiple companies and multiple sectors. Trump also bought millions of dollars in Nvidia stock during Q1. He purchased CoreWeave bonds, a highly speculative, risky position, and then Nvidia effectively bailed out CoreWeave. The CEO of Nvidia was then personally invited to accompany Trump on his high-profile trip to China. Trump also purchased millions in Boeing stock in Q1, and the CEO of Boeing was also part of that same Beijing delegation. The deals discussed in China were directly related to both companies' Boeing aircraft contracts and Nvidia's H200 chips, which were reportedly being considered for sale to China. Pressure is building behind the scenes as analysts and ethics watchdogs begin connecting these dots, because the overlap between Trump's personal investment portfolio and the specific companies whose CEOs he brought to Beijing is not subtle. It is explicit. Think about what this means strategically. A president negotiates trade deals with a foreign government. The companies at the center of those deals are the same companies he personally invested in weeks earlier. The CEOs of those companies travel with him on Air Force One, and none of this was publicly known at the time the deals were being made. This changes the strategic calculation for how we understand every trade announcement, every diplomatic summit, every policy statement this administration has made, because financial self-interest appears to be baked directly into the decision-making process. The Intel situation is another dimension of this entirely. Trump has publicly celebrated the fact that the United States government took a 10% stake in Intel, and he bragged on camera that the government made $30 to $40 billion on that deal as Intel stock rose. But here's what he did not explain. Trump is also a significant investor in Vanguard and iShares ETFs, broad market funds that hold Intel as a component. That means every time Trump promoted the Intel deal, every time he talked about how much the government made on Intel, he was also talking up an asset that was sitting inside his own personal investment portfolio. The lines between public policy and private enrichment are not blurred here. They appear to have been deliberately erased, and analysts are increasingly concerned about the sheer breadth of this portfolio. Because when you go through the full list of companies that appear in these Q1 filings, NVIDIA, Apple, Oracle, Broadcom, Adobe, ServiceNow, Workday, Synopsys, Cadence Design, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, Qualcomm, Disney, Airbnb, DoorDash, Motorola Solutions, State Street, Texas Instruments, Garmin, Boston Scientific, Procter & Gamble, Fidelity National, Eaton Corp., what you are looking at is essentially a portfolio of the most powerful companies in the American economy, companies whose fates are directly shaped by presidential policy, by tariff decisions, by trade negotiations, by federal contracts. Every statement Trump makes about any of these sectors, every executive order, every diplomatic deal, all of it now has a potential financial motive attached to it. And Trump's public statements during this entire period take on a completely different meaning once you understand what was in his portfolio. While the Iran war was driving market volatility, Trump was on camera talking about the Dow hitting 50,000, urging the public to stay calm, suggesting the stock market would recover, all while he was actively buying equities into the dip. He was, in effect, talking up a market in which he was simultaneously building positions. The question that demands an answer is this: was his public messaging about market stability influenced even in part by the fact that he needed confidence to hold while he was accumulating stock? There is one more layer to this that connects to a broader pattern of what critics are calling pay for play. The Trump Justice Department is now reportedly moving to drop federal fraud charges against Indian billionaire Gautam Adani, Asia's richest man, who was indicted in late 2024 over an alleged $265 million bribery scheme involving solar energy contracts in India. The reversal reportedly came after Adani hired new legal representation led by Trump's own personal lawyers, who then met with DOJ prosecutors and presented a case for dismissal. Part of what was reportedly offered as an incentive was a commitment from Adani to invest $10 billion in the United States and create 15,000 jobs. The SEC and Treasury are also reportedly moving to settle parallel civil cases with financial penalties. Whether or not that deal proceeds, the structure of it, a foreign billionaire facing federal criminal charges, hiring the president's personal lawyers, offering investment commitments, and then watching those charges disappear, fits directly into the broader picture that these financial disclosures are painting. What makes all of this even more politically explosive is that Trump has reportedly been working with allies in Congress to push for exemptions that would carve out the presidency from any potential ban on stock trading by government officials. In other words, even as public awareness of this trading activity grows, the political machinery is already being deployed to ensure that none of it becomes illegal. That is not the behavior of someone who believes they have done nothing wrong. That is the behavior of someone who intends to keep doing it. The sheer volume here, 3,800 transactions, up to $750 million in a single quarter, is unlike anything we have ever seen from a sitting American president. This is not passive wealth management. This is not a blind trust operating at arm's length. This is active, high-frequency trading in some of the most policy-sensitive companies in the world, executed by the most powerful individual on the planet, with full knowledge of the government decisions that would move those markets. The implications of that, if they are what they appear to be, reach far beyond partisan politics. They go to the core question of whether the office of the American presidency has been converted into a personal financial operation, and whether the laws and institutions designed to prevent exactly that have been systematically dismantled from the inside. The 278 T filings are public, the transactions are documented, the timeline is there for anyone willing to look at it. And what it shows is a picture that demands answers, demands accountability, and demands that every American, regardless of political affiliation, ask a very simple question: who exactly is the President of the United States working for?